Hello and welcome to Behind Beloit. I'm your host, Ellie Anderbyrne. This week on Behind Beloit, we go behind the scenes of how Beloit grows, from major industrial investments to housing developments and tax incremental financial districts. Today I am joined by the Development Director of the city, Drew Pennington. He is a graduate of the Urban and Regional Planning Program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and leads the city's economic development strategy by overseeing transformative projects like the Gateway Industrial Park and the $700 million Ho-Chunk development, while also managing housing planning, TIF districts, and public-private partnerships. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a bit more about how you got into this work. I know you hold a master's degree in urban and regional planning. How did you find your way into this city and into this kind of work?
Absolutely. So I attended UW-Madison, two different occasions, a bachelor's program in business and then a master's program in planning, but developed an interest in planning and development in between those two periods when I was living and working in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Living in one downtown and working in the other, did not have a car and used public transportation to get around, and so developed an interest in how cities are created and evolve over time and how the built environment evolves and how it influences daily life.
And then how did you find your way to Beloit, Wisconsin?
So I was applying for jobs after graduate school, had never been to Beloit until I interviewed here, and so came down here late 2007 and interviewed for the position which they had posted, and the economy was not great at that time, so was very fortunate to find something.
That's great. Happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Maybe you can talk a bit about what economic development actually means for a city like Beloit. When residents hear that term, they might think big buildings or ribbon cuttings. Is that all there is? What else is there?
Yeah, it's very community specific, so it depends on your situation. It depends on what you have available as an asset to attract businesses. For example, some cities have land, some don't. Some are completely built out. The job varies depending on those characteristics. What incentives do you have available? What state you're in? Different states have vastly different business attraction and retention programs. And in the case of Wisconsin, we have a very close partnership with Wisconsin Economic Development. And so their incentive packages we're able to bundle with our local incentive packages. And but really behind the scenes, the goal is to keep our businesses that are here as happy as possible and employing as many Beloiters as possible, and then attracting new businesses that are compatible with that mix.
What does incentives mean?
So for here locally, primarily discounted land. We have the Gateway Business Park where there's land available that is below market value because it's owned by either the city or Greater Beloit Economic Development Corp., which is a nonprofit. So we do not have to profit on the sale of the land. We are able to sell the land at a below market rate if we find the right buyer. It could also mean tax incentives, primarily TIF, tax increment financing. And that could involve a upfront incentive payment, but more often it's tied to job creation. So businesses are given a incentive to employ a certain number of folks, and then they are given a discount or a rebate on their property taxes over time in exchange for keeping those employment numbers steady.
And is that how tax incremental financing districts work, or is there more to it than that? Maybe you could explain those there.
Sure. So the general premise is that an area would not develop but for TIF. And so the way TIF works is the city's able to designate a district where they want to see growth and redevelopment. They then freeze the property tax mix that is there. So everyone that is in that district still continues to pay taxes. All the taxing jurisdictions continue to receive taxes, but they receive the amount that is frozen in time. In that district, then the city can borrow and spend money. For example, Gateway Boulevard was built with TIF money. So that road, which was approximately $12 million, the city can borrow money, build that infrastructure to attract development, and then when that development happens and the property values go up, the tax increase there, it's called the tax increment, that's used to pay off the debt. At the end of the life of the TIF district, which can be anywhere from 20 to 30 years, once all the debt is paid off, all the taxes go back to normal. So the taxing jurisdictions like the schools and the tech college, et cetera, they start receiving their full amount. So they receive a considerable jump with a successful TIF district. And the tax rate typically goes way down because all that tax base comes online at the same time.
It seems like a useful thing if you want to build something out and need to find a way to get the funds for it then.
Yes.
Are there other TIF districts active currently in the Beloit area?
Yes, we have a total of 3, one being the Gateway. We also have one on the west side on 4th Street. That's our oldest TIF, and that is a redevelopment TIF, so slightly different than Gateway in that the area is mostly developed, so the money is available for redevelopment activities. That could include demolition, site cleanup, environmental remediation, and so forth. And then we have a brand new TIF district. Our newest is on Prairie Avenue. That was just approved last year. So we are rebuilding our TIF districts. We had very few. We actually had only one when I started in the role in 2022 after having been maxed out. State statutes essentially max you out at 12% of your tax base. We were maxed out. All those TIF districts expired, and we were kind of back to the starting block to restart our TIF program.
Because the state wants to make sure that cities aren't going to overextend themselves in some way.
Yep.
Makes sense that there's guidelines for those sorts of things. Yep. Maybe you could talk a bit about, for a person like you, what does your job look like on an average Tuesday? You come here, you do this interview, and then what's next?
Yeah, a fair amount of meetings, and they could include internal meetings. Economic developers have a lot of external meetings as well, just with businesses that are either expanding or considering expansion, or just regularly occurring visits to see how things are going, what are what issues are cropping up. There's always something. For example, there could be a road construction project like one out in front of the studio here that's going to affect a lot of businesses. Making sure that those businesses are aware of the project and what the impacts are going to be and the timelines and so forth, and trying to address those questions.
And when is that your job, and when is that the people in charge of streets? We've interviewed some of them too.
Yeah.
How do you divide that kind of thing up?
Yeah, so they certainly manage the project. I'm in many ways a liaison between the business community and the city.
Okay.
So a lot of it's a lot of navigation. Your typical resident or your typical business owner or manager, they might know they need to call the city, but they might not know who to call. So a lot of referrals in that way.
They can start to you, and
Correct.
then you can direct them to the right place.
Yep. So meetings, and then a lot of project management. So at any given time, we have projects that we are actively working on that are in various stages of the pre-closing process. If it's a land deal where the city is selling land or the GBDC is selling land, there's always a lot of activity with those as they are working towards the closing process.
So let's talk about some of those projects. I think many people in Beloit are familiar with the Ho-Chunk project happening out at Willowbrook and Colley Road. We can see the construction and the cranes and buildings going up, but what's had to happen behind the scenes for it to come to this point?
Yeah, it's been an awesome long-term partnership between the city and the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I've been fortunate to be part of that for about 15 years. It's a monumental project for many reasons. I mean, the sheer scale of it. The investment is a number, north of $700 million, something like that we have not seen before. The jobs, the influx of 1,200 full-time jobs at more or less one time is unprecedented. The closest comparison is probably Amazon, where they opened their doors and hired hundreds of people at one time. But yeah, we're in constant communication with the nation as they work towards key milestones. The city is heavily involved in the infrastructure improvements around there. For example, our water resources folks updated the water treatment facility next door substantially. The roadway is being completely reconstructed with federal and city funds to better serve the casino, and then a lot of workforce development. We've actually had some meetings lately with the folks that are hiring for the casino just to make sure that they're connected with the local school districts that have hospitality programs, the tech college, other colleges and universities that have hospitality functions.
So in the case of this project, there was not a tax incremented finance district. It's the improvements in the area are being funded in other kinds of ways. Yep.
Correct. There's no TIF disbursement into the casino project. There was a TIF district along Willowbrook Road, but because of the length of time it took for the casino to reach approval, it expired.
Okay.
So it expired before the project was started.
Okay.
So it's federal and other city funds.
Okay. That's an interesting thing. What are you imagining will be the ripple effects across the whole community for this kind of project? I mean, you talked a bit about the jobs, hospitality, other things, but how do you expect this positive impact to flow out through the community?
So tourism is projected to be our largest growth industry over the next 20 years, largely because of the casino, but also because of the downtown, because of the Skycarp Stadium, because of the events that the college brings here and so forth, the film festival. The biggest impact will be just the sheer number of people coming into the city to that facility on a daily basis, which will be in the thousands. The convention center, the conference center, is the biggest probably game changer for economic development. With the ability to host 2,000 person conferences, we've never been anywhere near that number, and we are strategically located between Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, Rockford. The ability to attract trade shows, the ability to attract conferences from statewide associations, that is a huge opportunity here to really grow our hospitality industry and support small businesses.
It's great to hear. As we think about new people coming here, new jobs, there may be a new demand for housing. How are you and other folks in the city thinking about that, and how do you work with developers on things like meeting housing demand?
Housing is a huge need. It's a need now, and it's been a need for more than 5 years, and the casino will certainly accelerate that. The city has limited tools to create housing. We have TIF, which we touched on earlier. We have something called TIF housing, which is a state statute that allows us to extend the life of a TIF district by 1 year and then use that for affordable housing. So our biggest tool is affordable housing TIF funds, and we've developed a series of programs to really try to incentivize the private sector to build more housing that's affordable. So for example, in the downtown, we had an upper floor housing grant last year where business owners could apply for a grant, a 50-50 grant, to build out their second and third floor spaces. We had 15 of those units built. We have an affordable housing project at the former YMCA site that the city has committed $4 million of TIF housing money to. We have a subdivision on the west side called Western Hills that had $500,000 in TIF money. That one is market rate, but it is slightly below the going rate for a single family home in the market. So the developer worked with us to compromise on price. And then we have a variety of other programs that we've developed. We're building a lift station, for example, to help New Leaf Homes continue to build houses out in Eagles Ridge. And then the city's also contributing.
It's a lift program.
Sure. So for sewer service, a lot of areas of the Gateway have not had sewer service developed yet.
So it goes along the main road, but it doesn't go
correct.
out into the areas. Okay.
Right. So that's an example where the developer is at the top of the hill and they've worked their way down. They've reached the point where the sewer can no longer be served by gravity. So they need the city to help with a lift station to essentially pump the sewage to the treatment plant. And so we are doing that as an indirect incentive to keep that development going. That's the Eagles Ridge neighborhood, which is now on its 6th phase. And then we also have a project by Next Generation Construction off of Shopier Road to build 141 units, and that'll be a nice mix of single family, two family, and multifamily units.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about the sewage can't get pumped up the hill unless something's there to pump it up the hill, because it's not something I've ever thought about being a barrier to construction. But what other kinds of barriers? I mean, you're not a developer, so I'm asking you to speak for them, but what I imagine most new housing countrywide is built, by private developers doing this as a business to make profit. But what barriers do they face in building new houses, either as new developments or single units across the city? And what role does the city play with those, and what are ones that they just need to sort out in the marketplace?
Yeah, the biggest barrier is just the sheer cost of infrastructure and building materials, whether it's water mains, sewer mains, concrete, lumber, certainly some volatility with lumber and other
The
supplies.
cost of both city infrastructure types of
Correct.
things and the house itself.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
So the house itself, those costs per square foot continue to increase. Our challenge in Beloit has been we're right next to Dane County. So the lumber, the concrete, the steel, everything here costs virtually the same as it does in Dane County. However, developers can make more money there, so they're able to elevate the price of those housing units. The margin is really the difference. They're
Okay.
able
The cost
to,
of producing the house is the same in both, but they can sell it for twice as much or something
correct.
there.
The production cost is identical, but they're able to increase those margins a little bit. We have a core group of really good home builders here, and we do our best to work with them and support them through these TIF programs, but we do need more. We need more developers that are willing to help us produce the number of units. Really, the greater Beloit area needs about 250 new units a year to keep up with demand, and we're short of that.
That's interesting. How do you plan, the things we've been talking about, some seem like today problems and some seem like 20 years from now problems. How do you manage in this kind of work, keeping the long-term in sight while also dealing with the day-to-day demands, the interests of today's stakeholders against future ones?
Yeah, we really try to prioritize projects that are job-focused. So if we have a prospect that's going to come here and create a lot of high-paying jobs, that is a focus. Certainly that becomes a top priority. And then shepherding those projects through the approval process. Supporting small businesses is increasing as a priority of ours. That's been a focus area, and we've done that through a couple different grant programs. Again, a lot of just connections. There's a lot of great things here for small businesses, free incubators and accelerators and other things that can help support small businesses. So just simple things like creating a small business guide, promoting the downtown. Certainly Downtown Beloit Association is a great partner of ours, supporting their work. We've partnered with them and directly supported things like the Downtown Farmers Market, for example, paying for some security upgrades and so forth, because that is such a boost to small businesses downtown.
That's wonderful. So thinking about, when these big projects happen, you have a ribbon cutting, it feels great, it feels like success. For some people that would feel like job done, but I imagine you continue to monitor the projects for a long time. What does success look like in the short term and longer term for the things that you're working on?
Yeah, so success would be certainly seeing that business fulfill its promises and create the number of jobs and pay folks what the wages they anticipate paying them. Seeing that business expand, that's really the best metric, right? If a business comes here and they say, we're going to do phase 1, 2, 3, what we don't want is to see phase 1 happen and then stall out. What we do want to see is continue to proceed to those multiple phases. And that means hiring local contractors to build them, to design them, and then ultimately expanding their workforce. And so you look at businesses that, the businesses that we love to see expand here. I'm thinking of some of the original tenants of the Gateway. The Morse Group is a great example, where they were 20 years ago, they located here and they've expanded over time. We're able to support them, see them continue to create jobs, continue to innovate, and that's the biggest measure of success.
That's wonderful. Thank you for joining us today, Drew. It's been
My
wonderful
pleasure.
to hear about economic development in the city of Beloit. Today we've been joined by Drew Pennington, Director of Economic Development for the city of Beloit. Hello and welcome to Behind Beloit. I'm your host, Ellie Anderbyrne. This week on Behind Beloit, we go behind the scenes of how Beloit grows, from major industrial investments to housing developments and tax incremental finance districts. Today we have J.D. Schonecker, who's part of the Belmark Associates, a student-led market research firm at Beloit College that helps real clients answer real strategic questions. Recently, J.D., colleague, Landon Adams, produced the latest edition of the 10-Mile City Report for the Greater Beloit Chamber of Commerce, a beautifully designed, data-driven marketing tool that reframes how we see Beloit's economic footprint. Welcome, J.D.
Thank you very much.
Happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Let's just start with a bit about Beloit College and Belmark Associates. For our watchers today who wouldn't have heard about it, what's Belmark Associates? What does it mean to be a student-run market research firm, and how does it work?
Yeah, so like you said, Belmark is the student-run market research and consulting firm at Beloit. And what we do is we work with real-world clients with the help from our faculty advisors. We take on different projects. Of course, we're talking about the 10-Mile City Report today, but I know there's been work with Axe Housing in Beloit, the Beloit Public Library, and yeah, we do market research and we present our findings to our clients, and the projects vary, but yeah, that's the gist of it.
So this Beloit 10-Mile City Report, it's very interesting because it imagines Beloit not as a city of 36,000 people, but as a 110,000 person marketplace that radiates 10 miles from the center of Beloit and outward. Why does it matter that we redefine the geographic lens this way and not think about it as city boundaries, but as this broader 10-mile city?
Yeah, just with the quality and quantity of the communities around Beloit, you don't really get a true picture of either the cultural aspects of Beloit or the economic data that truly represents the area until you expand that 10-mile radius. With the city limits being cut off by the Illinois border, and they're somewhat small, it doesn't truly encapsulate what the area has to offer economically. And so, it becomes important to truly represent that. And, for someone like myself and my colleague Landon, who are new to the area, you don't really get a true picture of that. And that's the intent behind the report, is to give those who are not as familiar with the area a better understanding of what the 10-Mile City truly has to offer.
So you're new to Beloit. How did you find out about this project? How did you get involved?
Yeah, so coming to Beloit, I was recruited to play hockey here, and I was intent on pursuing economics as a major. And so on my first visit to Beloit, I requested to meet with one of the professors from the Faculty of Business, and it ended up being Professor Laura Grube. And so during that meeting, I did some prior research, and I asked about Belmark and kind of what that entailed. And from there, that was a big part of my decision to commit to Beloit. And in the fall semester, I had Laura as my Econ 199 professor, and we met pretty regularly. And then the opportunity to join Belmark came up, which I was very, very excited about. And then through that, the opportunity to be a part of the 10-Mile City Report, that opportunity came about. And so it was a pretty natural progression, but I'm very excited and thankful and grateful that I had the chance to be a part of this project. It must
be nice to be your first year in Beloit, both the college and the city. You really get a big picture of everything that's going on around compared to the average college student who comes here in their first year. Oh,
100%. Yeah, again, like I said, you don't really understand what Beloit has to offer until you explore. I mean, and hopefully the report is something that can aid in educating people and conveying what the area has to offer.
Where would someone find a copy of this report if they were interested in reading about it?
Yeah, so it is online in the business resources of the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation, which is the organization that we worked, that was our client for this project. We also print reports down at Celeb if anybody's in the area, but the easiest way is probably there's a PDF version on the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation's website.
Wonderful. And let's talk about the report itself a bit. So I imagine you had to collect data from a lot of different places, census data, other kinds of things. Can you talk about the tools you used? How did you get this together, and what was it like to find all these different sorts of data sources and bring them in?
Yeah, so the main source of data we use for the report is Esri GIS,
Okay.
which is geospatial information software. It collects data from the census. They also, I believe, have their own proprietary data that is fed into the system. But what it does, it allows us to pretty much create the 10-mile radius. And yeah, that's the idea behind it, is that it takes demographic, labor force, household income data, and it puts it for us easily to use.
That's really great. It's good to know about these resources that exist out there you can use for all kinds of different projects, not just this one.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's think about what this report might have revealed about Beloit's labor force. Were there strengths or hidden advantages or surprises that you found in the data that you used for the 10-mile city that perhaps local business leaders or just regular community members might not have thought about or might not appreciate?
Yeah, in terms of labor force, there hasn't been a ton of change over the past decade or so, but one of the interesting things we found was relating to the median age and the population.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, the population is projected to decline at about around 0.2% going forward,
Mm-hmm.
and it has seen a decline from around 115,000 down to 110,000 over the past decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
Along with there's a trend in the median age increasing, so we're seeing a bit of graying in the workforce and the population,
Mm-hmm.
which it's not anything alarming at the moment, but it's just something good to keep in mind when looking at the economic future of the 10-mile city area.
Mm-hmm. We need more Beloit College students to
Yeah,
stay in the
exactly.
Beloit area
Yeah.
and lower the graying population age. How about this? We talked about the labor market. How about the housing data? What did you learn from this data? Anything that stood out as opportunities or challenges?
Yeah, well, one of the most surprising things from the report that we found is that Beloit's home ownership percentage is about 12.6% higher than the national average and is much higher than any of the comparison cities we use in the report. And another interesting fact is that the median home value has increased, I believe, around 55% over the past
Mm-hmm.
decade or so, which is substantial. And that tells a mixed story, of course, because it's obviously great that household values are increasing, but it also has potential negative implications for affordability in the 10-mile city, which is, of course, a very important issue.
So talk a bit about these comparison cities that you use in the report. Who are they? How did you pick them? And what did they help us learn about ourselves?
Yeah, so we picked 5 comparison cities for the report. There are other Midwest cities that compare pretty well in size to the 10-mile city. Kenosha is one of them, Rochester, Minnesota, and there's a few others in there. But we also included Rochester this year, which does have a population about 20,000 greater than the 10-mile city area. But it's interesting to look at that in comparison to the 10-mile city because economically the data are very comparable. And like I said, Beloit, in fact, surpasses all of the comparison cities in most of the data that we look at, median household value, median income. With the exception of Rochester, but again, that's more just to show that Rockford is a very recognizable city, and the economic data that Beloit has to offer is comparable.
Interesting. What was the single most surprising fact you learned while making this report?
I would say probably the fact that the home ownership is so high. I mean, that's not something you'd really think about for kind of a smaller market like Beloit, but yeah, it was a pretty surprising fact.
So thinking about this project, this is not just a class assignment that you're making for your teacher. This is a real report that the Greater Beloit Chamber of Commerce wanted. What did you learn from this project that was different than just a classroom assignment when you have a real client with real deadlines and a real need?
Yeah, I think it's just really gaining that real world experience and gaining confidence in yourself to be able to perform in those environments. We've done a few presentations so far to different groups around Beloit. Of course, the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation, which is the group we made the report for, but also the Beloit 200 group and a recent presentation to City Council. And I think it's just really nice to get a real-world application of what you learn in the classroom to these real-world scenarios. Of course, it is different working with actual clients and attending meetings and meeting deadlines, and it's funny to say it becomes more important, but I mean that's the truth of it. Is these are actual businesses that you're working with, and it's just keeping that in mind and putting the necessary work in to meet those deadlines and just staying on top of things.
That's interesting. So talk a bit about, after you've gotten all this information, you've pulled it together, how do you actually produce such a beautiful report? Viewers, I don't know if you can see, but it's a beautifully laid out, really high quality print production piece. It takes a lot to get this kind of thing together. Talk about that process.
Yeah, that was a fun process. So we worked with Todd Anderbyrne, who's a graphic designer who I know you're very familiar with. But yeah, so we used Adobe InDesign for our software to create the report. Thankfully, we had a pretty nice template set out for us from the previous iteration of the report, and we kind of just made changes we thought were beneficial to the report. And that was probably about a 3 to 4 month process, just gathering the data, refining it, and putting it into the report. Of course, creating the new cover. We had the wood family fishing bridge as our cover this year.
Yep,
it's just,
beautiful colors.
Yes, exactly. Kind of captures attention very nicely and celebrates both the industrial history of Beloit and the city's celebration of public art. And yeah, so we compiled everything in InDesign. We worked with Todd to make sure everything was up to industry standards. And we got it to the printers, and that was about a week or so process. And yeah, the final product came out very nicely. I would posit.
Wonderful. It's good to hear. Well, thank you for joining us today. It's wonderful to hear about the 10 Mile City Report and what a difference it makes for all of our different partners in the community to plan for the kind of community that we are, pulling in from a wide area around the city of Beloit.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Today we were joined by J.D. Schonecker, a Beloit College student working with Bellmark Associates, a student-led market research firm at Beloit College that recently produced the 10 Mile City Report for the Greater Beloit Economic Development Chamber of Commerce.